Well, it's official. We were right. This show was right. We said here on Friday that Joe Biden would be dropped from the presidential race before the end of the weekend. And so it was. Late on Sunday for the US. The puppeteers moved Biden off the stage and tentatively nudged Kamala Harris in front of the podium. Good evening and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm your host, online editor Alexandra Marshall. Tonight we're going to put our feet on the ground in the US and catch up with the Trump campaign. We'll also have the UK Spectator's Freddie Gray on the show to talk about the legacy, or lack thereof, of the Democrats. Spoiler alert, it's not a good legacy. Michael Costa will be on to talk about the nightmare situation facing the CFMEU and Labor, all of which is being conducted under the eye of the taxpayer, who is getting a bit fed up with the behaviour of the unions. And finally, AlanJones will be on to talk about the terrible stories coming out of the Paris ahead of the Olympic Games, where an Australian woman has been assaulted and a camera crew covering the event attacked. But first, let's go back to Kamala Harris. The world has been left to cringe at her awful cackle, crazed hand movements and realisation that the only person less fit to run for the highest office in the world is now within inches of grasping the Democrat nomination.
Thank you all. Thank you. Can we just give it up again for my husband? It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us.
So do we.
And we do. Everybody here does.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe.
That was the creepy, disembodied voice of Joe Biden. And at that point, he hadn't been seen since the news broke via Twitter. Instead, he is becoming this weird, ghostly figure that's popping up at Democrat events. Here's another one.
I know yesterday's news was surprising and it's hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me to help us win this thing. Help me get this nomination. Help me win the nomination.
Did you see that eye roll on that poor girl toward the end there? Well, we're crossing live to the United States right now, where we have our very own Jason Morrison. Jason, you've been to the Michigan rally where Trump fronted 15,000 spectators. What's the mood like in the Republican camp?
In Michigan, it was extraordinary. Depending on who you believe, and I'll say the worst case scenario, the BBC of all places described the queue to get into the Trump rally as over 3 miles. Now, I can't say it took us 3 miles to get anywhere near the front door, but by the time we got near the front door, they were full. They had something like 12,000 seats with 35,000 tickets out there because it's a free event. They just assume people aren't going to show up. Well, what happened? Not just 12,000 people showed up. It was like 45,000. It was extraordinary. They turned people away. It was a bloody hot day. And I could not believe that because this is meant to be a swing state. That's not how things look in a swing state. He's got that state, and I think he knows it. And the crowd alone will tell you that if that's people prepared to queue up on a hot day and not get in, imagine what they're going to do when it comes just a chance to vote and it's colder.
Well, there aren't many leaders in the world who would get right back out there and front huge crowds of tens of thousands of people after an assassination attempt, especially not in a country like America where they're all carrying weapons. Kamala Harris has now been tapped on the shoulder, although she's not yet been endorsed as the next candidate. Donors are pouring in. Do you think that the Trump camp is worried about running against Kamala Harris, or doesn't it matter who the Democrats run at this point?
You know, I'm in New York with you tonight, my time, and if you walk around the streets of New York, you'd say he's got no hope. If you watch the media in New York, you'd say he's got no hope. Because in New York, this is kind of strangely anti-Trump territory, even though we're just a few blocks away from where he's probably right now looking down on everyone in his home state, hometown unit. But New York is not the fighting ground. It's in the other states, and in those swing states, we couldn't believe just driving around, and we drove. And people who know the distances in America will have a sense of this. From New York to Grand Rapids, which is a bit like going Sydney to Adelaide. That's an extraordinary trip. It's 12 hours on these amazing freeways, and everywhere you went, absolutely every small town you went through, even major places. There were Trump banners out and about people's front lawns. There were T-shirts being sold galore. There were people in the shops. I mean, you'd be almost taken out if you wore a Trump hat in New York. It was kind of the other way around in Michigan. You felt odd if you didn't have one on. That is the difference. And this is, I guess, the problem what the world will see in the lead up to this election, because, most of the world's media comes from New York. Most of American-based television comes from New York. Most of the major newspapers are coming from New York. I watched New York television this morning, and hail ho, we've got Kamala. She's in it's just amazing. But you watch anywhere outside of the major city of New York City, and even that tri-state area, and you see such a different America. And that's always been said. It's always been known, but it's never been more profound. I looking around at what I've seen in this sort of last, it's almost a week now, and driving around the place, you just get a sense that move is on. That it doesn't really so much matter what they do in a big place like this. What's happening already in parts of America, things have changed. And, that assassination attempt was part of that. Yeah, that woke a lot of people up to this man's drive and his impact and what he could mean for this country. But it also, I think, it was already happening, and you could see it. They weren't turning out just to have a look at the man they'd seen have this horrible thing, turning out because they believe in these principles and these values, which is his centerpiece. And, Alexandra, all I hear all the time is, the crude media analysis, it's all over Twitter as well, is these imbeciles talking about the black vote, the white vote, the Christian vote. And, it's not about that. I mean, people are not voting down ethnic lines. They're voting down values lines. And particularly in a country where I've never felt it more expensive, I've never felt it so underprivileged, even in a big bad city like New York, the degrees of people doing it tough are far greater on the other end of the scale, a little like Australia right now. And with that comes momentum. And there is momentum. Don't believe anything else you read.